Hello, everybody. My name is Guy Tall, and I am a photographer and writer. But obviously, today we are not here to talk about me. We are here to hear from my brilliant and inspiring friend, Colleen Miniuk.
I paid him to say that.
She did, yeah. Uh, by the way, the check didn't clear yet. But
Oh,
anyway, Colleen's going to share with us her inspirations and insights about learning how to live what she calls the big life with a capital L, and I hope she'll explain to us what she means by that. She's going to tell us about how to keep her paddle in, how to eat her pie first, how to find courage in the face of adversity, redefine success, and embrace authenticity. All themes in her recently released memoir, So Said the River. I will serve as your moderator. I also happen to be a character in the book and in the story. If you have questions for Colleen, please put them into the Q&A window. Hopefully you all found it by now. And some of you have submitted questions in advance, and I will incorporate some of them. Please just bear in mind, we are currently at about 140. I think we had more than 300 people registered, and I'm sure they'll watch the recording later. So we might not be able to get to everything, but if I know Colleen, I know she will definitely do her best. A little bit of a teaser. If you're going to stick with us all the way to the end, we have a big announcement coming beyond just talking about our book. And
yeah.
without further ado, Colleen.
Well, thank you, Guy, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It is such a treat and such a delight to share this very, very special moment with all of you. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Colleen Miniuk. I am calling in from the world headquarters of Colleen Miniuk Photography and Writing, my home office in Chandler, Arizona, on the ancestral homelands of the Hohokam. And I am a freelance photographer, writer, speaker, instructor, motivational speaker. Wait, I already said that. Stand-up paddleboarder, bubble lover, pie eater, and, and now the author of So Said the River. And I just want to thank everyone who has purchased the book so far, who has read the book so far. If you don't know anything about it or you haven't read it yet, it's great. That's okay. So Said the River is a story about finding fulfillment through adversity, thanks to some pretty crazy and unexpected adventures with the Colorado River. And hopefully you will get a deeper insight, a deeper taste of what all of that was like today. So before I formally start this conversation, though, I want to kind of have like my Academy Award speech. I'm not going to go through the 5 pages of acknowledgments, but understand that even though my name is on the front cover, I did not undertake this alone. And I am so, so, so very grateful to everyone who has contributed. If you have purchased a book, you are part of that journey now. And I very much appreciate all of the supporters that have gone out and bought the book or the ebook. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every person in the 5 pages of acknowledgments, but there are some people online that I do want to give a very special shout out to. My amazing, incredible editor, Eric. Hi, Eric. You are incredible. Thank you for keeping all of my words and ideas in a very narrow channel and for putting up with me and not understanding commas like ever. And that's okay. One day I will get them and it will be because of you. Lori Johnson, my amazing proofreader, she has just such a keen eye. She was so instrumental in finalizing this manuscript. We had 2 sets of beta readers, not one, but 2 sets of beta readers that helped me finalize the manuscript. To Bruce Hucko for contributing the gorgeous hand-painted maps, all 6 of them, my printer and all of my reps at Friesens, all of my friends, all of my workshop participants, all of my geographers, everybody, and of course, my family, especially my mom, dad, and my brother, for all of their love and their endless support and for being characters in this book. And Guy, you were not just any character in the book. You were an extraordinarily important character and friend throughout this entire process. And so I thank you so much for your efforts in terms of supporting the publication the way you did. I mean, you contributed the foreword, you contributed pictures, the cover photo even, right, from our 2016 amazing Green River adventure where it never stopped raining. And we wanted to do this conversation because as our friendship grew, as over time, we found we had a lot in common. And most importantly, our love of tater tots, right? But also life philosophy. And in fact, you have a new book coming out this fall called Be Extraordinary. And it is a very different book than mine is, but it's there's some similar themes. And so I can't wait to talk to you when your hardcover comes out later this fall. So, but for now, I am very, very thankful to you, Guy, for moderating this session. And yeah, what do you say? We get started?
Well, it's my great pleasure, and right back at you. All those great compliments. I very much enjoyed our friendship, and being part of this story was very meaningful to me. So I'm very, very glad to do this. Well, are you ready for some questions then?
I am ready.
You are ready. All right.
I
Let's
hope they're
start
good,
with some
the hard ones.
Well, let's just get warmed up with some of the audience questions. So,
Okay.
David Kepley asked, "Why did you decide to write this book?"
Hi, David. First of all, hi, David. Thank you for the question. And thanks to everybody who sent in questions. This was not the book I intended to write. I actually, when my life started falling apart in April 2015, a little bit before that, I had no intentions of writing a book. I just simply wanted to get through life. And when we launched, my mom and I launched in November of 2015 onto Lake Powell, I did have a little bit of an idea about maybe doing this cute little mom and me, like girl power adventure. Look at us go across Lake Powell. And I wanted to tell the story of, just two women being outside and trying to help other people, women especially, but men too, help them have an adventure in their life. And well, when Powell didn't go according to plan, when we were rescued at 4 days into our 14-day trip, when I got home, we were kind of processing the trauma. My mom was like, oh gosh, this has got to be a book someday. And I was like, yeah, there's things happening. There are very different words falling onto the page now. So I journaled our trip. I had been writing some notes about some of the stories that had happened, like me falling in Moab. I thought it'd be a fun little blog post. And then they just started becoming chapters. And one of the questions that Linda O'Connor asked, a listener online, hi, Linda, is she asked, what surprised you most while writing the book? And the surprise for me was that this turned into an adventure memoir about an overachieving perfectionist failing, not once, but twice, coming to terms with my lifelong fear, like crazy, and embracing solitude after I thought I would be married forever and ever. And so none of those things were on my spreadsheet for life. Before this, I had written multiple guidebooks, magazine articles, some poetry, things like that, but I had precisely zero experience writing an adventure memoir. And that's what started coming out. And that was very surprising to me after our Lake Powell trip.
So you said you had zero experience. That ties into another question here from Gina Diaz. She asked, how does one go from photos and diary notes to writing a blog / story / book when one is not a writer?
Yeah, well, you spend time learning how. You figure it out. You make it up. You fail and you try again. And then you fail more, and then you try again, and you learn some new stuff, and you try again. I would equate it very similar to, I would equate it to learning photography, right? So there's technical and creative aspects in terms of composing a frame, right? This is just a little different. This is composing a story. And there's obviously technique and creativity that goes into that. But, I had to learn sort of framework of how to write a story, how to, embrace a theme, how to build dialogue and gesture and scene around a theme. I had to learn grammar. I still do not understand commas. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry, world. I You have to understand grammar. You have to understand how to put together a narrative arc. And the narrative arc that I used was the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is where you have some sort of exposition, you have some sort of, action, call to action, and then there's some rising action, there's a climax, there's some falling action, and then a transformation. And I kind of did a little bit of zigzagging within that. But also ultimately, I had to learn about the hero's journey, which was popularized by Joseph Campbell. I studied other memoirs. I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of other books for ideas. I spent a lot of time Googling the almighty library of wisdom, the internet, right? It knows all. I attended numerous writing workshops. There was one where we didn't write at all. We just banged on drums. We were doing percussion to learn rhythm. Takadima, takadimi. Like it was really eye-opening. And so, the other thing is that you just experiment. I mean, there were times where I spent almost 2 days trying to get a single sentence dialed in. And so I also think if you don't know what you're doing, it's important to get some feedback from people who do. And so I had, like I said, I had 2 sets of beta readers. I had an editor, I had friends, I had family, I had a lot of people looking at this manuscript and really giving me honest feedback, which is just absolutely priceless. And so the thing is that I actually thought I was done with the manuscript in 2017. The story didn't have a logical end until 2021. And so in that time frame, I learned a lot about how to write a memoir. And I think the biggest thing is, how do you do something you've never done before? It's just believe you can do it, surround yourself with amazing people, talented humans, learn a lot of new things, and go do it.
Just like that.
Just like that.
By the way, you're getting some good comments on the chat here about commas and about haikus. I know those are important to you.
Perfect.
Yeah. So Rocky Sharwell asked, did you have to edit stuff out due to length that you wanted to write about?
I sure did. And part of that came from when I decided a theme. I had to build everything around that theme. And I didn't have a theme until relatively late. I would say about 2.5 years ago is when I really dialed in the theme. And the theme is, let me back up. I learned from the almighty library of wisdom, the internet, that memoir was an argument and that you were the example. So this really turned it from bunch of journal entries, me navel gazing, and into more of a narrative arc. And when I got that feedback, I was like, okay, well, what's my arc? What am I actually trying to argue here? And it's finding fulfillment on your own through adversity was what I came up with. And so if the story didn't fit that, it got cut. And so I lost really big stories that were super fun, but had nothing to do with the theme. And so like losing my shoes on one of my Grand Canyon rafting trips, and I learned how to run lava falls because I lost my shoe. Like that's super funny, but it didn't fit, the theme. And there were other one-liners that I would have loved to have kept, but they didn't fit. And so one of the one-liners that I ended up cutting was, those who only have one midlife crisis are really selling themselves short. And so, but yeah, so I definitely, the book in 2017 was about 82,000 words. It bloomed to it swelled to 125 at one point, and it is currently right around 95,000 words.
Nice. Also about writing the book, Dory Blobner asks, what were your biggest challenges writing this book?
Well, part of it before I had the theme, and even to some extent after, was getting all of my intertwining and very messy personal issues to all line up really pretty. So it's like, okay, well, how does perfectionism, how does listening to other people's voices, how does having, being a control freak, how do those things prevent us from finding fulfillment? And so I had to make sure that I kept everything straight. They say, write an outline. And by the time I figured out I needed an outline, I had already had, 20 some chapters, and my writing style was just way too organic, which is really hilarious because I'm usually very spreadsheet flowchart. And I did do those. I did do some of those, like to make sure that like the Colorado River character was developing the way it should across all of the different chapters. So it was very deliberate, but my writing was just kind of very organic. We would call that organic, like free and wild. But it was like when I was writing part 3, I would ping pong to part 1 and be like, okay, I said this in part 1. How do I show transformation in part 3? Or I've showed transformation in part 3. How do I flip back and make sure that I've emphasized this and I've set it up properly in part 1? Part 2, our trip was actually one of the more stable parts of the book. It was written very early on and really had very minimal changes over the course of the 8 or 9 years. But part 3 is obviously the newest. Part 1 was the hardest to write. But I mean, it's just simple things like, I say so they say a lot at the beginning. I needed to show in part 3, when does so they say become so I say, and you can kind of see that gradually, but there's some very specific points in the book where I make those decisions for myself.
All right. Well, my turn now. So we've been friends since long before these events happened. So maybe we can give people a little bit of insight into the backstory. And I remember when this all started, you told me about your separation just before the Moab Photography Symposium, and I was pretty amazed that you decided to still go ahead with it, and given what just happened. And I was even more amazed that while you were there, you didn't seem to miss a beat. You were professional and vibrant with your classes and presentations. And how did you manage that, just carrying that shock and the grief at the same time and still go out there and perform?
Yeah, so I think I was really good at putting up a facade for the first 40 years. Like I was very good at shoving any, what society calls all those negative emotions. We can't be sad. We got to just shove it in and be happy, and do your job. And at Intel, we had an employee value on our badge. It said make and meet commitments. And so this idea of skipping the Moab Photo Symposium, even though my life had just completely imploded just 4 weeks before, I never even contemplated not going. Like, I mean, it's where my friends were. It was better than me sitting at home and crying on the couch. And so I was very much at that stage in denial that things were actually happening, right? So there's the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Acceptance definitely didn't come until like chapter 17. And so I was very much in denial. I thought it was a temporary situation. I thought my life was going to go back to perfectly normal. I thought it was just all a bad dream. And if I just went and did my job, I would go home and everything would go back to normal. And so I think for me, it was just putting one foot in front of the other and just trying to get through what was, kind of a shocking situation.
Mm. Acceptance came in kind of late. I would think that when people experience a shocking event like that, it may be very tempting to want to find the quickest way back to safety, to some kind of a new normal. But of course, events like that can also, as you demonstrate, can be opportunities to try something different or to course correct and to gain some new experiences. And you obviously did more of the latter, not even knowing where it might take you. So how much of that was a conscious choice, or was it just obvious and intuitive to you that this was also an opportunity, that this loss was an opportunity to start something new?
Well, certainly from, April 2015 through the end of Lake Powell, I was absolutely cycling through denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. Like I was definitely fighting the whole process. I was fighting my situation. And I definitely wanted, you know, I wanted safety. I wanted to go back to the life that I understood, even if it was not, it was perfect, but it wasn't in hindsight perfect. And so for me, when we didn't finish our crossing, I turned to acceptance. I come to the conclusion at Lone Rock that I'm going to be okay. Like, I have a chance to reframe what has happened to me, and I was going to reframe it in a way that was more productive for me. So for me, it was absolutely a conscious choice. I also have a really hard time staying in victimhood. And so I think there was a line in the book where I come out swinging. Like, if there's a problem, I'm going to fix it and I'm just going to move on. And so for me, it was very much a conscious choice. If you're okay, I have a passage from my book that I would love to read about this.
Okay, actually, if you don't mind waiting just a second, there's a message on the chat here from Elaine Aragon, and she said, for those of us who haven't read the book or don't know what happened, if you don't mind just giving maybe just a couple of lines of what happened before the reading.
Sure. Yeah. So what triggered this whole event, Elaine, is that my husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore. And so we were separated, and I had planned out my entire life. And so I thought it was a perfect life, and I was going to live this perfect life forever and ever and ever. And it turns out that I had checked all of the boxes that society had expected of me. And it turned out that I wasn't really all that happy. And so to help me find some self-worth, some sanity, I decided to cross Lake Powell and with my mother. And the trip did not go according to plan. We got in some trouble on day 4. And after these 2 events in 8 months, after we, I didn't see success. I had 2 quote failures in 8 months. My head exploded. And so I decided that I couldn't live the way that I was living anymore. And so part 3 is really about part 3, and I'm going to read from chapter 17, is really when I start making different choices for myself. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So this is from chapter 17 on the flat water. And like I said, up to this point, I had been fighting my situation. So rather than try to redirect the storm, for the first time in my life, I abandoned spreadsheets, Gantt charts, and plans, and including the idea of trying to cross Lake Powell again and trying to save my marriage. I didn't rush downstream into the dam. I didn't try to swim upstream, pretending I would somehow find the ocean. Instead, I anchored to my reality. I gave in to my situation, but I didn't give up on myself. I explored the calm reservoir of time and space my ongoing separation offered me, with a mix of patience, acceptance, and determination. You might not be able to push life any more than you could push a dammed river, but you can push yourself to discover new places while you are floating on the provisional lake. Instead of asking Craig and others, "What do you want from me?" I asked myself, "What do you want for yourself?" I started by cleansing and reshaping the only thing I had control over, my psyche. One by one, I picked up each thought, habit, expectation, and assumption as they crossed my brain, and studied each with curiosity, as if it were a piece of gear. Was it serving me well? Would it provide me support on the journey ahead? If not, I thanked it for its service and left it behind. In life, as on a river trip, you do not need much to get by, and what you do need but do not have is easier than you think to improvise. Besides, extra baggage does not fit on your board if you pack enough courage. Drifting alone in my mental wilderness spawned possibilities as a matter of conscious choice. I chose to drown unsupportive thoughts. I chose to see opportunities, not despair in the uncertainty ahead. I chose to find balance in breathing and existing, and not in achieving or chasing. I chose to find peace, purpose, and rhythm in the present moment. I chose to notice the reflections of life's highlights and shadows gleaming on the surface. I chose to admire breathtaking canyons and powerful waves, and an optimistic sun coloring the landscape, even on the coldest days. I chose to see my solitude as a gift, not a condemnation. I chose how I wanted to live my big life with a capital L each and every day, regardless of how my separation might end, and regardless of what I thought they, society, thought I should do. Sitting stagnant in a pool of victimhood changes or fixes nothing. Simply letting time pass does not heal all wounds. Neither does running away to the great outdoors. Self-awareness and inner growth do. Fulfillment emerges from our internal attitude to our circumstances and in the individual decisions we make in our everyday lives, not just in good times, but in hard ones too.
So, you're in Moab, and one day while you're eating breakfast at a coffee shop, you just decide to paddle the full length of Lake Powell. In hindsight today, how would you characterize that decision to paddle the lake? Does it seem unreasonable or capricious or overly confident, or does it seem like a reasonable challenge for you to just help you come to terms with this new reality or to find some solace in a meaningful experience?
Well, it may say something about my mental state, but it was a very normal decision for me. Like that seemed like a very reasonable thing to do. Like, of course you would cross a lake, the United States' second largest reservoir. Of course you would. Like, I would characterize that as my naive enthusiasm, and I have an abundance of that. No, I mean, for me, it seemed very normal. I think we packed way too much stuff, and my mother would agree with that. But really, I mean, Guy, I excelled at moving on. I excelled at, in the book, you saw that I changed high schools. I transferred from Stanford to Michigan. I left Intel. I have not been afraid of change. I was terrified of uncertainty, but I was not afraid to change. And I really believed this trip was going to change everything. And by that, I thought it was going to convince my husband to come home and I'd go back to my perfect little life. The trip absolutely changed me, just not in that way, like in a totally different way. And I think that really speaks to the power of nature, the power of friendship and connection. And, I think when I look back at the decision, I had support from my family. I had support from my friends. I had the external validation that I needed, right, at the time from people I cared about that this wasn't a stupid idea. And so maybe I should have got some new friends, or maybe just I'm just so proud of the ones that I have are always up for an adventure. And so, speaking of support, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. You wrote a absolutely beautiful meditation for me on my time on the river, and I read the meditation to my mom on the first day of our Powell paddle to write just minutes after we started. Readers will get a chance if they haven't already. They'll read it in chapter 8, starting on page 128. And so my question to you is, how did you come up with such moving thoughts, and why was it important to you to send me off with those sentiments?
Mhm. Wow. Um, well, I guess I should should start by saying that I didn't write it thinking it will end up in the book or that anybody else other than you would end up reading it. But I guess I have to say that one thing that I appreciate about our friendship is that we can talk openly about these personal struggles, among other things, and know that we have that kind of support. So it was something that I wrote for a friend, hoping that it would help. And I believe you reproduced it in the book pretty much word for word, so you didn't edit it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, and maybe some of you already know this about me, but for me, this desert has for a very long time been my own sanctuary. And I knew that these experiences, I knew that being out there could help you or anybody find balance and answers, and just in these experiences of being out in these incredible scenery. And so I wanted to try to maybe give you a nudge toward being more open to these experiences, go in without any expectations and not just be completely focused on just, like you said, executing the plan and achieving the goal and writing a blog post about it, but really open yourself up to stay connected. So I guess that's where it came from. I knew that you were in a lot of pain and suffering and needed some answers and some solace, and I had hoped that that trip would do that for you too.
It most certainly did. I mean, it was freeing enough and important enough to me that even though I read it in chapter 8 when on the first day of our trip, I also repeat the last line when I'm sitting on shore, when Anthony has rescued us and we're on the shore at Hulse Crossing, and I'm trying to come to terms with my trip being over, and my after my mom has just almost died, for hours, banging up against the cliff in her kayak. And I repeat, don't be afraid to cry. And I think that was the permission I needed, again, from external sources before I was able and willing to give it to myself. And so that was very, very, very helpful to me.
Glad to hear it. Before I continue, I just want to acknowledge I've been watching the chat. I just want to thank Pam Barnard for sharing her personal story here too. It's really, really powerful. Um,
Pam's amazing.
yeah. So after these events on Powell, then you decided to paddle Lake Mead. Why not, right?
Why not?
Did you feel like you had something to prove?
Oh, that's a good question. For Lake Mead, no. I had sort of societal pressure, if you will. I had a lot of people asking when I was going to retry Powell. And so if I felt any like for a little while I felt like I had something to prove with crossing Lake Powell. Um, I definitely did not have anything to prove on Lake Powell. Or on Lake Mead. I redirected. So I was going to try Powell, and I had everything in place. And actually on a number of occasions in between 2015 and 2018, I had a number of plans to go back to Powell. And for some reason, they just the universe just never allowed them to come together. There was something that always came up. And so I decided to paddle Mead just a week before I was going to go to Lake Powell. That was a very spontaneous decision. And the reason I did that is I had a chance to support the river. I had a chance to discover a new place. I could still be on the Colorado, but I could see something new and I could have this fabulous experience. And it was interesting. I didn't necessarily plan to cross Lake Mead alone. That's what I ended up doing for 6 of the 9 days that it took to cross Lake Mead. In that sense, I think when the decision was made that I was going to continue by myself, I think I needed to prove to myself that I could face adversity on my own and make it out okay on the other side, and maybe even have fun doing it. So in the Lake Mead chapter, and it's chapter 20. Is it chapter 20 or 21? I can never remember which chapter these things are. Yeah, 20 is all in. The I For me, I mean, I fell in. I fell into water by myself, like open water. I mean, for someone who's terrified of water, that's terrifying, right? It was really funny. Scary, but funny, but just really funny. I broke my double-bladed paddle. My tent broke. Things were going wrong, but it was this very profound, very meaningful moment where I got to share it with the Colorado River and really connect with myself and my own voice. So for me, I don't feel like I had anything to prove. I was just going out to have a good old time. And I did.
And you already mentioned that you did it solo, but you originally planned to paddle Lake Mead with your mom, and then the day came last minute and your mom decided that she couldn't go through with it. You had a choice to make. You could either go alone or not go at all. So you want to maybe tell us about that decision to go alone? Was it obvious to you, or did you have to think about it? Or what did it mean to you, knowing that despite having survived the same experiences on Powell as your mom, it scared her enough that she decided to stay behind and you still decided to go?
Yeah, so in my mom's defense, I kind of sprung this on my parents. They didn't even know I was going to Lake Mead until 4 or 5 days before I actually did it. And so when I told them that I was going, my mom's like, maybe I'll go with you for part of it. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so that moment when my mom, and I'm gonna get emotional, when my mom chooses not to go with me on the lake, is the whole point of this book. It's the whole point of the story. And I can't even use words to express how monumental this decision was for her. She had almost died on Lake Powell. She had literally dedicated her entire life to my well-being, my brother's as well, my dad's too. She cared and she gave so much. And so that is the moment where my mom chooses herself. She chooses her own path. And I cannot be more proud of my mother in that moment. It was one of the most remarkable experiences. And so my mom and I experienced trauma on Lake Powell together, but afterwards we took very different paths. So my mom, as you all read through the book, she joined me in Grand Canyon rafting, but really she decided that keeping her feet on land was more of her thing. And so her, along with my dad, have hiked the Pacific Crest Trail in segments over 1,800 miles since Lake Powell. And so my mom is, that's, you know, my mom and my dad, that's their dream, and they're doing it. And for me, after Lake Powell, I kind of went the other way. I leaned into my fear, I leaned into my curiosity, and learned more about how to navigate water. So, for example, I took a whitewater stand-up paddleboard class with oars on the Lower Salmon River. I learned how to stand-up paddleboard class 4 rapids. I took swiftwater training classes on the Arkansas. I learned how to row an oar boat. I rafted with friends on 9 different rivers. I even trained to be a river guide in the Grand Canyon. I mean, like, so when it came to that moment when I needed to decide whether to go alone on Lake Mead or not, for me, it really wasn't a decision. I had experience, I had some training. I didn't want to be cocky. I didn't want to be overconfident. I have the highest respect for water. I still fear water to the degree that I need to. It is extraordinarily powerful, but I had the respect, I had the training, and I really was fairly confident that I was going to be okay, even if, you know, wind and weather and circumstances kind of threw some curveballs at me, and it did, but I was okay. And so yeah, that was a really remarkable just sequence of decisions.
Well, speaking of curveballs, without spoiling it for people who haven't read the book yet, uh,
Yes.
later in the book, you find yourself dealing with grief again, a second time, and this time after having had some profound experiences. How would you compare these two experiences? That experience of finding yourself again having to come to terms with a major loss. And there's actually a similar question from Gary Jones. He asked, your description includes, in quotations, loss. How have you dealt with grief encountered through loss, I guess, on 2 separate occasions?
Yeah, so again, we don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read the book yet, but in the epilogue, I talk about the waves of life. They don't start. You know, just because you found fulfillment or you found a way to live a more peaceful existence, the waves of life just don't stop. We just get better at handling them. And for me, when my second round of loss and grief came into my life, I had essentially been practicing for 6 years on how to navigate and deal with grief. And some of the things that I think were extraordinarily important, first and foremost, is that I didn't drown, or that people who experience grief or loss don't drown or hide grief. When my husband and I decided to separate, I was full of shame. I was terrified that the world was going to judge me, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my own family for like a year. And when I finally reached out to people and started making it real, I like the floodgates of support just poured out. And I thought, I used to think everybody lived a perfect life, like, and I was just trying to keep up. And so when I started telling people that I wasn't living a perfect life, everybody's like, oh yeah, no, I've been there. Like, I've been there, done that. And so, understand that grief and loss and struggles, pain is a part of the human experience. And one of the things, I just saw this yesterday on social media and it made me crazy. There was a list of emotions, and at the top it was like good emotions, and at the bottom it was like bad emotions, and it was like this ranking. And it's absurd. Like, that was just a snapshot of what it means to exist as a human, like from, you know, all the way from euphoria to, you know, depression to sadness. Those are all just things we feel. And I think if we don't judge them, we accept our grief, we welcome our grief, we welcome, you know, like you said, don't be afraid to cry in your meditation. Like, it's okay. I think the other thing that's really important when loss and grief hit, is being nice to yourself. So, you know, finding a community that will support you and help you, but also finding that platform and that foundation for yourself. You know, asking yourself, what do you need to get through this for yourself? You know, be very mindful of the things that are going through your head. For me, I was very, very negative self-talk up until, you know, this experience. And I turned myself into my biggest cheerleader. Like, you know, how would you comfort your friend? comfort yourself that way. That's what you need to say to yourself. The other thing that I didn't talk about in the book, but I did find very helpful, which will surprise nobody who knows, absolutely no one who knows me, is that I actually danced a fair bit. You know, animals have this thing where they shake off stress. There was a moment where I couldn't get out of bed, and I would play a song, and I was like, you get out of bed and you dance to one song. And some days it would be spastic. I mean, it would be like, you know, headbanging Cyndi Lauper, whatever, you know. But there would be other times where I would be, you know, sidestepping like an 8th grade boy at a junior high dance and just absolutely sobbing. But I moved, and it reminded me that I was still alive and I still had time to live life to the best of my ability. And so dancing, I know, is something that a lot of us have experienced in my presence, but dancing actually had a purpose of shaking off some of that grief. And I mean, you know, some other things: courage, curiosity, having curiosity and uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. If you can focus on growth, I definitely did not in either of my situations. You know, when I reacted to the news, the first thing I did not think of, what can I grow? What can I learn from this? No, I mean, I sobbed like you, like, and then once you get through that emotion, you know, trying to get back into a more productive headspace. And so, you know, one of the things is when we think about loss, and in this case, we're talking about death. Death is the only thing certain. It is the only thing that I did not plan for. Nobody plans for death, right? Who puts it on a Gantt chart or a spreadsheet, right? It is really unfortunate to me that we would experience loss. You have to experience this kind of loss to understand what's important to you, but that's what happens is you understand what happens to you. So do we have time? Can I do another reading? I've got a whole thing about this.
Okay.
All right, where are we going to do? Okay, so this is in the epilogue, and it's on page 340. Our time, like a river's journey across the land, is indeterminate yet finite. I don't mean that to be morbid or depressing. I mean it to be freeing. If we expected death to rip us away at any time, not just in old age, maybe we would choose to celebrate every day like our birthday, to live our own individual big life with a capital L. Maybe we would choose to eat that pie first. Maybe we would not ask anyone for permission to love ourselves and to love our lives. Maybe we would not wait for bank holidays and so-called special occasions to wear our best dresses, drink out of our expensive glasswares, and hug our loved ones. Maybe we would not waste time entertaining fear, holding on to resentment, or second-guessing our self-worth. Maybe we would stop toiling away at things we don't want to do, kowtowing to other people's judgments, and reacting to the meaningless trivialities so many of us subject ourselves, sometimes unknowingly, day in and day out. There will be a time when we all meet our own oceans, where we will be absorbed back into an unknown and unknowable place from whence we came. With the time you have left, what definition of success will you embrace? Instead of concerning yourself with how you wish to be remembered when you're gone, because it won't matter to you then, consider, how do you want to be celebrated right now? For your car, house, salary? For the trophies, newspaper clippings, and medals in a box in the garage? Or for being an authentic human who made the world a little better, kinder place than you came into it? How will you shape your landscape? With hate, ugliness, fear, judgment, and disappointment? Or with love, beauty, courage, acceptance, and contentment? Choose wisely.
Nice. So speaking of being celebrated for all this talk so far about loss and challenges, it's also important to mention that after all these harrowing events, you finally did find a very meaningful and satisfying life for yourself as a very independent person. You run a successful business on your own. You write, you teach on your own, you travel on your own, you make your own schedule. And that's not a stereotypical storybook happy ever after, is it?
Well, certainly not the one I expected, certainly not the one that I had put on the plan for my life, right? But I think, you know, I learned in this process that there is more than one path. There's more than one right answer. And, you know, at any point, we have the power to change our course. at any time. Like right now, we could change our course with one decision, one paddle, one different action. And so it's, for me, it's just really, yeah, this isn't what I expected. And I think the other thing that I want to point out with this question is you use the word find a meaningful life and satisfying life. I've learned what works for me right now. And there's not going to be this point in life where you find yourself and, oh my gosh, everything is perfect and everything is happy. That's what I actually thought. I actually thought that if I achieved enough and I did enough and like I made other people happy, like I would like have this, eternal happiness. And that's not the case at all. I have a peace, I have an acceptance, I have purpose right now that I am very excited about. And so it's kind of about evolving. There's a line in the book somewhere that says, water doesn't stay in one place for very long. And so I have found what means something to me, what is very satisfying to me right now. But I'm very willing to see what happens around the next bend. You never know.
Mhm. Debbie White asked a very interesting question. She says, writing the book, I'm assuming, meant reliving everything over and over. Was that experience therapeutic or cathartic, etc.?
Yeah. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for the question. This book, this manuscript has been my companion every single day for almost 9 years. And I worked on it somehow, even if I was just thinking about it or writing a sentence or, writing a chapter or moving things around or finding the thesaurus. So I've relived this and I've relived the story. I've had to reread things over and over and over and over again. And I will be perfectly honest, it was extraordinarily painful. It was very, very hard. And it was also very cathartic. And there were moments of significant triumph. I mean, the pages are where I sorted out my life. I mean, these events were happening to me, but the writing was how I was processing it. And I was literally, as I was processing it, as I was living these events, I was literally trying to rewrite the story of my life and how I wanted to live it. And I feel like I found that. And that part was very, like I use the word triumphant. That's very triumphant. That was very cathartic. But even today, the events that I describe in the book are some of them are very, very difficult for me to still have in my head. And they will always be with me. They're a part of me, and I don't want them to go anywhere. They're a part of me. They're an important part of what shaped my life. And it has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life to write this book.
Oh. So
And I've had a lot of achievement. I'm just going to throw that out there.
post a picture of your trophy case.
Yeah, it's in the garage. I don't even look at it.
So you mentioned that this book, writing it and thinking about it, living with it, has been pretty much a daily presence in your life for 9 years, and now it's done. Is it a difficult separation for you? Are you worried about adjusting to some new routine without it, and maybe finding something else to put all that creative energy into?
Yeah, so I expected separation anxiety. I have had separation anxiety when I have written my other guidebooks, my previous books. And it's funny, I did not actually feel a lot of separation anxiety. There got to a point. I'm the publisher as well. So I'm, as the author and the publisher, I got to decide when I thought it was ready. I did try to ask my editor and my family and my friends, do you think this is ready? But at some point late last year, I was like, oh, this needs to go. Like it just needs to be out in the world and it needs to do its thing. And I think, back to Debbie's question, like I couldn't reread this thing one more time. Like it's, but I really wasn't afraid of the uncertainty or the acceptance when it was out in the world. It's a little bit different than a guidebook. I mean, where we could, maybe argue. I wouldn't, but maybe we would argue where to stand and what equipment to bring and what's the best light and things like that. With this book, this is my truth. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Like, awesome. Thanks for reading. But it, for me, needed I wanted the messages to be out there. I felt like it was time, and I wanted to make more space for people to connect with the story and put some energy and spirit behind that. And so right now, that's what I'm doing. All of my creative energy is going into releasing this book, and that's the privilege that I have as a freelancer. Is I can do whatever I want. Nothing about my life is routine. So you had mentioned this idea of finding a new routine. I don't have routine. It's like there's just so many fun things to do. I'm really not worried about running out of stuff to do. I'm running out of time to do that. I'm worried about running out of time to do them.
Amen. So you mentioned photography, which is good because we have probably at least 4 questions that are more
Oh
or less
boy.
the same. I'll read some of them. Bill Matulich, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked what effect has completing the book had on your photography, if any. John Flukehouse, again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, says your book describes how a series of traumatic situations helped you, quote unquote, discover and live my own big life with a capital L. Maybe you can explain what you meant by that. These traumatic happenings had a strong impact on your emotional state of mind, given that our emotional state affect the photographs we make. I'm interested in how you think these traumas affected your photography, and if your photography changed as a result of your discovery of your own big life. We have similar questions from Saikat Chakraborty asked, Hi, Colleen, I'm looking forward to reading the book. People often talk about creating images in tune with your feeling. Do you feel that you created images that were uplifting and happy when you were feeling sad? If so, did that help shake off the grief to some extent, like dancing did? So a lot of questions about photography. So how did these experiences change or affect your photography?
Absolutely. Life events influenced my photography. It influenced not only what I photographed, but how I photographed. And so hopefully, yeah, there's a lot of great questions. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully I'll get my answer will cover all of that. So when we had the first separation in April of 2015, I was incapable of making a wide angle landscape image. And I would consider myself a wide angle addict, a wide angle lens addict. And when that happened, I panicked. I was like, oh my gosh. And what I mean by I couldn't make an image is I would stand in front of a scene and I would literally not be able to see anything. I mean, it was almost paralyzing. We go through this as photographers, right? You just don't see it. You don't feel it. You don't know what you're looking at. And so for me, I think the world was just too overwhelming for me to try to put into my photographic frame wide angle scenes. What happened is my perspective shrunk to macro. And I made a lot of macro images in that time frame. And like I said, I was really frustrated about it. I was really scared by it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, did I lose my mojo? Am I ever going to get it back? And what I saw coming out of that is a lot of very dark images. And one of the things that I noticed is that when my life is crazy, I actually make more horizontal images. It's a yin and yang, so horizontal orientation tends to feel more peaceful, and it conveys more peace. And so I was kind of yin and yanging, and so a lot of my images from like 2015 to 2018 were absolutely horizontal, very dark. And so, like, what I mean by very dark is very shadowy, like very heavy shadow, very blue color, red colors, not so much the greens, not so much the yellows, not hopeful, not happiness at all. In 2018, I kind of popped out of it. And I think I had been talking to myself enough, like I had been cheerleading myself enough, and things were coming together that I had learned like how to kind of come to terms with, kind of accept my situation and make the most of it. The same thing happened in 2021. So when I experienced loss again, I noticed that I couldn't make a wide angle landscape, but the image this time I welcomed it, and I poured my emotions into my photographs. So there was also another question that I noted from Judy Rawson that said she was interested in the interplay between the larger life themes and the photos in the field as you shoot. I think Igor even asked about conceptual blending.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I was trying to do is conceptual blending is taking two existing things and putting it together in a new, different way. And that's where sort of creativity comes from. And so I was trying to match my emotions with the things that were coming out of my frame. So like I would photograph, like burned wood, but I would turn it black and white because I was feeling very stark about the world or my situation. After 2021, though, I found the middle ground. I found intimate landscapes. And this is something you excel at, Guy. I had never seen the in-between before. And all of a sudden I was starting to see the middle ground, which I think is very representative of my overall life situations, is it wasn't extreme anymore. It was very much, kind of in that middle section. And so, expressing light and dark, the balance of light and shadow changed, my colors changed, my orientations changed. So I was photographing more vertical because my life was being more peaceful, it was a little bit more peaceful. So yes, photography was an excellent way for me to express my emotions. I think it was Bill who asked what effect has completing the book had on my photography, if any. To answer that question, I haven't actually picked up a camera since early June. I've just been way too busy releasing the book. So there's been a lot going on. I'm trying to ride this wave. But one of the things that I think really helped me is in 2021, not getting frustrated with it again, maybe to use the overused cliche, going with the flow, like just kind of embracing it and pouring those emotions into my photography.
And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned also Linda Walker also asked how your photography came into play. So
everybody's asking that question. That's a great question.
You covered it well. Our friend Malcolm Cross, he was with us on our writing workshop in Arizona.
Hi, Malcolm.
Yeah, he asked, what role do you think your intuition has played in where you are now?
There's an interesting quote by Joseph Campbell that, and I don't remember the exact quote, but the sentiment is essentially that as adults, we strive to get back to our happiest childhood memories. And when I think about what my happiest childhood memories are, I have a very specific photograph that comes to mind. And it's a photograph of me when I was about 3. I think I was about 2 or 3. Well, 3. And I'm sitting in a plastic swimming pool. I am surrounded by all my dolls, and I am reading to them on my grass hill next to my unnamed creek in my backyard. And if you think about what I am doing today, is I am bringing people to water. I am in a variety of different locations. We're gathering around, we're learning about photography. Like, it is a little bit crazy, right? So I don't know if that was just me trying to get back to my happiest childhood memories. Is that intuition? Is that coincidence? Is that just, I'm not sure what to call that. But what I do know now, or what I do believe now, is that society tells us to seek these external sources of fulfillment. And in this process, I learned that we already have the answer within us already. I knew what happiness was when I was 3, before society got its hands on me. And now that I don't want society's hands on me, I'm going to live that happiness. I'm going to live in that fulfillment. And I would encourage you all to ask that question as well. What's your happiest childhood memories?
So, Colleen, we're about at the hour mark, but I assume we can just keep going, right?
Yeah, let's get, we're doing, hopefully people are still awake.
I think, hopefully. All right, so we have several questions about the book's availability. Lori Johnson asked, will it be in bookstores? Patty Walker and Debbie Schmaltz asked if the book will be available in Canada at the same time it's released in the US. And also B. Stein and Jackie Ross both asked about narrating an audiobook. Is that an option?
All right, I'm going to start with Lori's question about will it be in bookstores. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that I am the publisher. I have self-published the book. And one of the things that I am learning is that distribution is the hardest. Bucking, there is a very ingrained system with the bookstores. So I don't know how much information we want to go into, but essentially the bookstores get their books from a distributor called Ingram. And in order to distribute through Ingram, you have to have 7 to 10 titles a year, which I obviously don't do. There are their alternative to that is Ingram Sparks, and it's print on demand, and you have to use their printers. And that is not something that I want to do. I have a very specific, I am very particular about printing. Friesens is one of the most world-renowned printers. They do a phenomenal job, and I didn't want to do print on demand. So I'm kind of stuck in between, but that's what the whole book is about, is being the anomaly and doing it your own way. So my book right now, it will be in select independent retailers. It is in bookstores across the West right now, but it is also available through my website. So the book's website, sosaidtheriver.com. It's available on Amazon as both an ebook and a hardcover. For the folks in Canada, it is available through my website, but the shipping is expensive. So right now, until I can figure out some sort of distribution outside of the system, the ebook is going to be your best option. That said, I have shipped plenty of books to Canada, to Norway, to Brazil, to Germany. It's been remarkable. So, and then I think the last question you asked about an audiobook, I am learning how to do an audiobook. So I did a test. You can listen to the prologue at sosaidtheriver.com, and I am going to do an audiobook, and I'm going to record it from my closet. It's going to be amazing. I've got all the software and the equipment, and it'll be a professional recording. But I am hoping that comes out possibly early next year. I need to work some kinks out, but it is happening, and it is going to be super fun.
Cool. Okay, two related questions. One from Erin Crowley. She asked, what has been the most rewarding part about publishing this book? And Bob Younger asked a similar question. If there was one takeaway, one lesson from your life to date, what would that be?
Oh, goodness. I might actually separate those two. I'm going to start with Erin's question about what's been the most rewarding part of this book. So for those of you who have been with me on workshops or have heard different presentations, like we've had a conversation where when we make a photograph, the minute we click the shutter, the majority of the value has already been achieved. And Guy, this is actually something you and I bantered about, over many campfires and, glasses of tequila, where we already have this phenomenal experience. And by the time we have some form of result, we have already gained most of the value. I would say it's similar for a book. So by the time I wrote the book, the value for me had already been achieved. Like, I needed to change my life. I needed to write the story. I did that. It was very fulfilling. However, I feel like a book is really different from a photograph in that I published this specifically to help other people. I believe right now my purpose, at least for right now, is to help other people live their best life. And so for me, what has been the most rewarding part of the book is hearing from everyone that has sent me feedback, it's incredibly spectacular and it's incredibly generous. I love hearing the favorite passages and the lines. It's also great because I just remember, it's like, oh, I wrote that line when I was sitting right here. And I have these very visceral memories. I love the selfies. I think one of the things that I appreciate so significantly is how people have been willing to open up and share their own struggles. So people have been afraid to share their struggles, and they are, sending me notes, heartbreaking notes, but very, very moving notes of confidence and courage in sharing those stories. And of course, the stories about overcoming, their own adversity has just been super heartwarming. It's been super motivating and inspirational just to hear what other people. So all of the feedback that I have received so far, it just absolutely, my heart is completely overflowing. I feel very deeply anyway. And every time I get a message, I smile, I cry, I get really, really emotional about it. So what was the second part of that was, what was the one piece of it?
Bob asked, what was the one takeaway or the one lesson from your life to date what would that be?
Listen to your own voice. Make sure your voice is the loudest thing in your life. And if you are trying to sort things out, go find, go find other voices, go find supportive voices, go listen to others, but make sure you're listening to yourself first. Okay.
All right. So you mentioned your community, and I think maybe most people here probably have seen that you have announced your book in a very emotional video that you posted on Facebook and I assume Instagram, but I'm not on it, but probably.
Yes.
And the day after I saw it on Facebook and it had almost 200 comments and they were all they're all positive and very emotional and grateful and supportive, and people were commending you for your authenticity, and they are on the chat right now. That's got to feel good. And also the commenters appear to be from all over your former students, your friends, your schoolmates, coworkers, people from different parts of your life. So what does it mean to you to know that people you've crossed paths with in so many different times and contexts value your friendship and your work to that degree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means that I have the absolute best community in the whole world. Like, it's that simple. Like, I mean, I just am surrounded by amazing humans. What can I say? It has been, and you can see I'm pretty emotional about it. I it's just I to hear from so many different angles of my life. It's like this one big confluence of a celebration of so many different channels that were so important to me in my life at various times. And I think for me, I think it's it's evidence that you can do great things. You can, help other people when you're surrounded by such supportive voices. And, I for me, it's been so overwhelming. It's just been so great. And I just am so grateful for it. So
Well, later, when you're not in the hot seat, you got to review the webinar chat here. I think
okay.
you'll be even more overwhelmed.
Oh.
Very interesting question from Linda O'Connor. She asked, "Did you have vivid dreams during your trip and while you were writing the book? Were they new dreams that you'd never experienced before?"
Oh, that is a great question.
Hmm.
Um, I had some wild dreams, but I have to be honest, I had a lot of the same anxiety dream. So I am, I have a recurring dream that I am in school and there's the test and I forgot to study, right? Like I think a lot of people have had that one. I can't remember the combination to my lock on my locker. That's a good one. I forgot my uniform for volleyball practice. That's a good one. A lot of my dreams in this 8 years were very anxiety driven, and it was because I really didn't know how to handle uncertainty without, grasping onto control. I was really just trying to learn how to kind of take it as it was coming and try to have more confidence in the worries and in the uncertainty that I was facing. So I had some pretty wild ones too, and I have wild dreams anyway, but that's that conceptual blending. When you when you practice it in photography, you practice it in real life, your brain just kind of becomes awake in that area. So yeah.
Okay, another interesting question from Jimmy Arcade. He asked, Colleen, you mentioned attending a writing class that primarily consisted of using percussion to think about rhythm of your writing. As a fan of Jack Kerouac's books, I've been aware of the influence of jazz music in his writing. Did the percussion lessons contribute to or influence the rhythm, meter, or music or musicality in your own writing style?
It absolutely did. So the writing workshop was a writing workshop with Craig Childs at his house, and it was with a percussionist friend that he knew, and the name is escaping me, which is really awful right now. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but I mean, like I said, we just did, rhythm pretty much the whole time, and we added some words occasionally. But so when I got back from that, it was a 2-day workshop. When I got back from that workshop, I printed out my manuscript and I went through and I takadimi takada takadimi takada, and so takadimi is 4 and takada is 3, and so not only did I go through, and I have a picture of this somewhere. I know I have a picture of the front page of it was either prologue or chapter 1. It was the first page of where I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. and you use them, on purpose for, effect. But not only was I doing that with the words and the sentences, I did it with the paragraphs as well. And so there was a rhythm to the paragraphs. There's a rhythm to the payoff. There is a rhythm to when I wanted you to, move through a scene very fast versus move through a scene a little bit slower. And so there was some very, very specific things that I did after that workshop. And that's fascinating to hear about Kerouac. I love that. So thanks for that question.
Hmm. And Linda Walker asked, could you please discuss conservation? Did your journey create an awareness that you didn't have before?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you spend any time on the Colorado River, your eyes, you know, you can see the bathtub ring in the Colorado River and Lake Powell. And I think just this idea of, when I saw the lake, when I saw the river become a lake, I had all sorts of questions, especially, for life, but I also had questions about conservation and things like that. I am very engaged with a lot of the Colorado River, some of the conversations around the compact of 1922. They're renegotiating that right now. And I am starting to have conversations with organizations like American River and Great Old Broads for Wilderness to try to get more engaged with the Colorado River. My goal for the Colorado River, there's a lot of opinions, right, about everything. My goal in being involved with some of these conversations is that I want the Colorado River to be wild and free, which means, we've got dams and we've got reservoirs, and those, we can argue about that or not. I want the river to meet her ocean. I want her to reach the Delta, and she has not done that naturally in over 20, it's actually a bit longer now, a lot longer than that. And so I want the river to have water for herself. She has never had an allocation of water for herself in 100 and some years. And so I also want it to be clean. I want it to be clean water. And so that's kind of where I'm at with the conservation. It's life. Water is life. Water gives life. And if we take care of it, it will take care of us.
Now we have the same question from two people, so I assume it's a very important topic. Ken Chandler and Teresa Rasmussen both asked, what is your favorite pie?
Oh, funny you should ask. It's the one in my bowl. And today we have peach pie from Pie Snob in Chandler, Arizona. And so, I do not discriminate against any sort of pie. I love all sorts of pie. I like fruit pies. I like chocolate pies. I like pot pies. I like shepherd's pie. I like all pies.
Not cow pie.
Oh, well, there, the one that you can make cow pies, like fake it. I don't know why you would want to do that. Okay. Anyway, so.
So Colleen, if you believe it, maybe we should move this a little bit, but we actually have a question. Have you considered a podcast?
Oh, funny you should ask that.
Wow.
The big announcement that Guy and I have tonight beyond our book is that we are starting a podcast called The Capital L. And it is not going to necessarily be focused on photography or writing specifically, but we found that we had so much to talk about and so much in common with our life philosophies, and that we both have this very big passion to help other people live deliberately and live their authentic life. And so we are in the planning stages right now, and we don't have a specific release date yet, but we're getting closer. And so Guy, do you want to add anything for that?
Well, maybe just elaborate on what you already said is there's a lot of themes in our books that we touched on either as part of a story, as part of short essays, and we want to dedicate whole episodes to things like authenticity, to things like every now and then we want to have a good cry, and just we want to do very, very well researched science-based, experience-based episodes about some of these topics that we have a lot to say about from knowledge, from personal experience. So we, like Colleen said, we realized we have a lot more to say than we could fit in just our books and essays.
Yep. I'm very, very excited. So the capital L is what we're going to call it. And it's about the big life. And, it's about shedding expectations and living, throwing out perfectionism and all of the things that go into finding fulfillment in your own way, in your own path. And so, yeah, I'm so excited. Who
Okay.
asked that question? That is awesome.
It was Michelle or Michael. I'm sorry,
Michelle.
but Michelle, please. Yeah,
Michelle. Yeah.
Michelle.
Nice.
Yeah. Also another Michelle Schwartz asked if we can replay the opening video, your slideshow again. So I assume we'll do that just after we depart. But I guess that about wraps up the questions. So thank you very much, Colleen. That's been great. It's been a lot of fun. But any final words?
Well, thank you so much, Guy. Thank you to everybody who had such great questions. I hope you found this conversation insightful and inspirational. And yeah, I just appreciate your support so very much. If you have not ordered the book already, you can order the book at sosaidtheriver.com. If you have already read it, and if you would be so inclined, it helps me sell books if you leave a review on Amazon and or Goodreads, and it boosts the algorithm, and so that's very helpful. In terms of this recording, we are going to process the video, and it will come out to you. The link will come out to you in an email tomorrow from Zoom. And so if you would like to rewatch this, if you'd like to watch Guy and I over and over again and all of your fabulous questions, that would you'll be able to do that. I have several in-person book events coming up. So I start them next week. I start them on Tuesday in Flagstaff. I head to Durango on the 31st. I head to Telluride on the 1st. And then I'm in Moab on the 3rd. And I am also headed to Yosemite in November at the Ansel Adams Gallery. I am going to hopefully get a tour together in Western or Eastern Washington. So lots of opportunity to connect with me in person, and I would love to see you all. You can learn more about my workshops and all my other books through ColleenMiniuk.com. That's my website. And of course, we're on Instagram and Facebook. Guy, how can people get in touch with you?
My website, guytowel.com, is the portal to everything about me, or at least everything about me that I'm comfortable making public. That's it.
Well, and we are very, very excited for your new book called Be Extraordinary. It's going to come out. Do you want to talk a little bit about the pre-order?
Sure. So the book is currently slated to come out in print in October, and shortly after that, we're going to be switching roles, and Colleen will be interviewing me. You can pre-order the. Oh man, you can pre-order the book either from my website if you live in the US. I will send you an autograph copy, or anywhere else in the world you can order it or pre-order it from Amazon. I think it's already available, so should be out soon.
Awesome. So proud of you. So excited for you. It'll be amazing. So, all right. Well, I think that's all.